They say, but it's in your brain. Let's say where? It's not. A third-dimensional being can manipulate the universe of a two-dimensional being, not vice versa. Listen, a two-dimensional being has no idea the third dimension exists. You following me? There's patterns that show that we know up to 11 dimensions exist. Literal patterns and equations that can show dimension 4 through 11. Accessing it is a whole different beast, but accessing it is the God consciousness. It's the miracle frequency, you feel me? The angel frequency, the God frequency is everything. Once we access it, if we access it, we realize that we are God collectively. See, it's all about time and mathematics. We perceive time as linear, but I saw in the equations that is not. If the law of thermodynamics are correct, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So everything that ever was and everything that ever will be already is, and it still is. So in the higher dimensions is where we access our true godliness. Only there we transcend the perspective of death. Only there we travel at the speed of thought. And there is where
light from the sunlight, from light bulbs in your house, the wavelength of light actually sends a signal, a frequency to the optic nerve, which sends a signal to this nucleus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which signals the sympathetic nervous system, which signals the pineal gland. You start making serotonin, and that's kind of gets you up, gets your brainwave going. You're moving to beta. You're kind of alert, and then at night, the absence of light or the inhibition of light slows brainwaves down, and the brain chemistry starts responding to a change, and the pineal gland takes serotonin and goes through just a real simple process and makes melatonin. And so the function of the way we live in this three-dimensional environment with visible light creates a rhythm called the circadian rhythm. So we're up during the day and we sleep during the night, we dream, we repair, all that stuff. And so when you begin to activate these latent systems, Luke, when energy begins to interact with those latent systems, and the pineal gland has those little tiny calcite crystals, and they're rhombohedron in shape, and they're stacked up on top of each other, and they're in our pineal glands. Everybody has them in there. And when we do that breath, and we hold our breath, and we begin to contract and pump and pull those intrinsic muscles in, it's the activation of those crystals, because the mechanical stress that we're putting against it as we hold our breath and pump begins to produce what's called a piezoelectric effect. Now mechanical stress is turning into an electrical charge. Now it's electrically activated, so energy is going to move that direction. So then if you do this properly and you begin to electrically activate those crystals, they begin to shimmer like a radio receiver. And if you can suppress the neocortex by dialing down the brain waves into a low level of alpha and even theta, and the person knows how to be conscious in their subconscious mind, and now the antenna's on, now you gotta learn how to use it. You gotta learn how to tune into frequencies and energies. And so how much time do we put our attention on matter in a waking day, and how much of our attention we put on energy? Very little attention on energy. So this is an opportunity for people to begin to learn how to use the dial and begin to tune into frequency. So when their brain is in theta, they're very suggestible to information, but that information is not coming from their three-dimensional world. The information is coming from a frequency, because frequency carries information. So the pineal gland now is electrically activated. It's tuning in when someone locks into it while something cool happens. All of a sudden now it transduces that frequency like a TV antenna into pictures. So all of a sudden now your brain goes lucid and you start having profound imagery. Now when you use plant medicines, follow your breath and you contract those intrinsic muscles. As you follow your breath and you bring that breath all the way up to that pineal gland, and you hold your breath and you keep your attention on that pineal gland, that's your target. The act of contracting those muscles along with the holding of your breath would begin to push cerebral spinal fluid right up into your brain. And as you begin to hold your breath, you're pushing that cerebral spinal fluid right up against the crystals of the pineal gland and applying a mechanical stress. And then the mechanical stress begins to electrically activate those crystals. And when those crystals become electrically activated, we are turning on the radio receiver in the brain. Our vision. Pineal gland has been known to
exerting mechanical stress on it. This mechanical stress translates into an electrical charge, And it's this exact action that compresses the stacked crystals in the pineal gland and creates a piezoelectric effect. The crystals of the pineal gland generate an electric charge in response to the stress you're applying. One of the unique characteristics of the piezoelectric effect is that it's reversible, meaning that the materials exhibiting the direct piezoelectric effect, the crystals, also exhibit a converse piezoelectric effect. Once the crystals in the gland are compressed and are creating an electrical charge, the electromagnetic field that is emanating from the pineal gland causes the crystals in it to stretch as the field increases. When the crystals generating the electromagnetic field reach their limit and can stretch no further, they contract and the electromagnetic field reverses direction and moves inward toward the pineal gland. When the electromagnetic field reaches the pineal gland crystals, it compresses them again, producing yet another electromagnetic field. This cycle of expanding and reversing the field perpetuates a pulsating electromagnetic field. When we inhale through our nose and at the same time squeeze our intrinsic muscles, we accelerate the cerebrospinal fluid into the brain. As we follow the movement of energy to the top of our head, then hold our breath and squeeze, we are increasing intrathecal pressure. The increased pressure moves the cerebrospinal fluid from the fourth ventricle, through a small canal into the third ventricle.
And is visible in the human fetus at 49 days, which is, as we've said before, the number of days that a soul takes to reincarnate, according to the Bardo Todol, the Tibetan Book of Death. There are still many people who don't believe in the existence of the soul as an immaterial substance.
Feel it in your brain. If the energy strikes your brain, don't be afraid of it. It's just the liberation of energy. Let it happen. Take a moment, keep your eyes closed, and do it again. I would recommend 5 minutes in the beginning and work your way up to 10. Usually people who do it properly have a very significant amount of energy in their brain. We now know that this breath creates more brain coherence. It increases the amount of energy in the brain. It activates the autonomic